everyone. I am so excited you're here. Comment below. Let me know what grade do you teach? What school or district are you from? I would love to hear from you. If so, I'm Shannon Keebler. For all of those of you who may not know me, I'm so glad you're here. I am the creator of the Math Genius Squad, professional learning for math expressions users. But tonight, we're continuing our conversation around assessment. So if you missed it, last week we chatted about the assessment grading covers and how I take a unit test and I break it down by standard in order to get really relevant data and information, and then how I report that out, how I track that across the class, and then how I use that information to do some small group reteaching. And we're going to go back to these grading covers. So if you're in the Math Genius Squad, you're going to see these grading covers. They're in the assessment support section of any unit. So you click any unit, go into assessment supports, and you're going to find these grading covers. If you are not in the squad, just post grading covers in the chat or in the comments, and we will make sure to get the link over to you so that you can also download these from our shop. So let me share my screen here so that you can see what piece of information I'm using. And even if you don't have access to these, it doesn't mean you can't follow the same general idea. So the way I have talked to students about math is the same way that I talk to adults about math, which is this big main idea of what do you understand? So I think that it's a common thing for us to walk around the room as we have a lesson going on and students have their whiteboards out, maybe they have their workbooks, they have manipulatives, whatever it might be. And we're walking around the room and we are looking to see who has it right, instead of walking around the room and looking to see what do they understand? So this happens even with our assessments, and you're going to see this on our student reflection sheet, that I want to point out and focus on what do they understand. There is something to be said about reporting out of, I got this right, I got this wrong. We're not saying not having those conversations, but I need to back it up with information that keeps students' momentum moving forward. Okay, so let me give you an example. I was teaching last week, North Shore friends, hello, and I guess maybe almost 2 weeks ago now. Really lovely to be in those 4th and 5th grade classrooms. And every lesson that we are in, one of the things that starts to happen is we post a problem, students work on it. I get out, what are students, the initial thoughts on that? How might they do this? So in 4th grade specifically, we are working on the area model in all of these different classrooms and having students go back and model, how on grid paper would you create an area model based on this equation? So let's say it's 4 by 26. And once you draw an area model that is a 4 by 26 rectangle, how might you break up the area model to count it? Now, I don't have specific pictures right now to show you of these examples, but we had so many different things happening on this centimeter grid paper. Now, if I would have shown them explicitly how to set up the area model, I probably wouldn't have gotten a lot of variety. I would have had a lot of kids that just replicated what I did and did it correctly because they followed my steps. But because I said, hey, I want you to show me what you think you would do. Okay, when they had it on their actual paper, I got all sorts of different ideas. So I have students that only went down 2. They didn't go down 4 when it was a 4 by 26. I had students that remembered us talking about breaking it up by 10s. So they did separate area models, right? They did a 4 by 10, a 4 by 10, and a 4 by 6. Good idea, right? It wasn't one rectangle, but they understood that we should be breaking these up. There were a lot of different ideas out there. So I'm not walking around thinking, well, they don't have it right. I'm walking around looking at the boards and they're thinking, and I'm thinking, what do they understand? So this student understands breaking up 10s and 1s. This student understands that we have to count all the squares inside, and he was literally counting 1. Okay, he understands that area is the squares inside. He's not understanding that multiplication is a faster way to count those squares. He still thinks counting by 1s, which is what we did a lot in 3rd grade, is still the way to go. So as I bring up different kids' work and I'm sharing it with the class, does this show it? And I'm saying, why or why not? And how we would take what they did and we grow it to where I want them to go. As I'm doing that, there was no, I'm embarrassed she's using my work. There was no shame of oh, I didn't do it right, or I wasn't finished, or you didn't let me finish. None of that, because the way I present it is in that, oh, this is really interesting. Here's what I really like that this mathematician did. And I'm pointing out things that I appreciate, that I like, things like they labeled their size. I know that they were doing 4 by 26. I really like that they did a mark every time they got to a group of 10. There's a couple things that I disagree with, or I'm just wondering about. Would you turn and talk to your neighbors about what you think those things might be? What do you agree with? What do you disagree with? But I started with, I really like XYZ. I also started with a few of the examples saying, I totally understand what this person's thinking. Because as I show the work, kids are like, what? Huh? What are they doing? Which can then be shame producing, right? Of like, oh my gosh, I'm embarrassed. They're using my work. She's using my work. And all of the kids don't understand it. And I'm hearing the noises they're making. And instead, as I'm hearing some of those noises, I say, totally get what they're thinking. Oh my gosh, I could have done the same thing. I understand. That empathy immediately gets everyone to relax their shoulders for a moment and say, oh, I'm not an idiot. Okay. When we have empathy, it's saying there's something that you have that is maybe not quite right, but I understand where you're coming from. That keeps our mind open in terms of, hey, I actually have like something right. And I just have to do this little thing to fix it different. So as we look at their assessments and we start to share data, that's what I want you to think about is not only am I having students reflect on their assessments, okay, so I'm doing that during the class, what you just heard me say. But then when I look at this, remember, this is the assessment guide. So if I look up here, this is assessment grading cover. If you missed that last week where we have this unit test broken into standards, we've bolded which part of the standard actually is relevant to these test questions. So these test questions cover this standard, but not the fullness of the standard. We're really just looking for those highlighted pieces. We go to the next one, we grade, etc. Okay, so I'm giving them some scores here. And just like I don't want to communicate with parents, hey, parents, your kid got a 63%. If I send that to a child, what's the child's thinking? The child and student is also thinking, I suck at math. The parent is thinking that. Everybody's thinking that. It's a 63%. So instead of just giving an overall percentage, I'm doing it by grade. I'm saying based on these questions and this standard, how did that student do? So it might be a partially proficient. It might be making progress towards the standard. Okay, so maybe it's yellow. Maybe it's green. I color this box green. Maybe I actually give point values. Okay, I might do yellow, green, green. I'm like, well, he had 2 out of the 3 he got proficient on. So this box would be green. And then I also maybe give some point values to that. So I can give an actual score. When I look at it that way and I see that kids got a grade per standard, that says something very different to me as a mom or as a dad, or as a teacher. That means there are standards I'm understanding and there's standards I'm still growing on. So if I take that idea and I now go to the student reflection sheet, I'm having that exact same conversation with students. I'm saying, I want you to look at your test now. I'm giving it back to them. So that'd be the first thing I question. Are students even given their assessments back to reflect on and to do work with? Do they ever even see it after they've done all that hard work? It's one of the things that drives me crazy about state standardized testing is we do all of this build up to that standardized testing and our kids never even get to see their scores. It just bewilders me. But either way, for our unit test, we can control that. So I'm looking at this and I say, I want you to decide how did you do on solving multi-step word problems. So take your test, take your grading cover, and I want you to color this in. If you got all the points right, you'd color it in green. If you got some of the points, you'd color this box in yellow. Okay, I need them to go through our assessment now and them to reflect. But I'm going to choose maybe a couple of them, not all of them, for us to dive deeper in maybe a small group or even a one-on-one. So I might say, I want you to take the one that you're the most concerned about, or I'm going to highlight the 2 that I'm the most concerned about, and you choose which one you're the most concerned about. I might have to guide that conversation just a bit. And when I'm guiding it, I'm having them come to, maybe a small group table or something. They have their assessment there. They have their cover sheet. And I'm saying, so which one did we select? And let's just say it's estimating, use place value to round. Okay. That's one of the ones on this 4th grade unit 2 test. Okay. And I said, well, why did you choose that one? They're like, well, look, I got all red. And I said, so what did you understand? I want you to look at number 3. What part of that do you get? Now, I may leave it open-ended if I feel like the student is really capable of seeing that part, or maybe they've never been asked that type of question before, so they don't really have the metacognition to answer it. So I have to model the type of thing I'm thinking that I'm wondering if they're thinking. So I might say something like, well, so I can see that you understand it had to go to another decade. I can tell that you knew it had to land between 40 and 50 or between 2 decade numbers. I can see that because you did a number line for me. But I might even say, so I understand that you know it has to go to a decade, but what I don't know is if you know which 2 decade numbers it falls between, because I didn't see a number line here. So I don't know. Do you know that? Hey, why don't you draw a number line for me and you show me on a number line where you think where this number falls? And they do that. And I'm like, see, you do understand it. But because you didn't draw the number line, even your brain, what do you think happened? And they're like, well, I got mixed up. I thought I was supposed to go down and I forgot, because they're going on some rhyme or rule or whatever it is. Other kids like, oh, now I see it was supposed to be between 30 and 40, not 40 and 50. Okay, whatever the example is. I'm saying, so do you see what you knew? You know a lot. You knew it had to go to a decade, but maybe you put it to the nearest 100 instead of the nearest 10. Or you did. So I'm trying to say, here's what you knew. How can you go from what you know and what revision would you make to get it to where you need to go? So maybe it's something like long division, multiplication, I don't know, whatever it is. And I'm going to say, so what do you know? What part of this? Like, well, I knew how to write the problem. I'm like, you betcha you did. You wrote the problem correctly. You put the bigger number, the dividend inside the house. You put the divisor outside the house. Like, do you know how many fourth graders don't write it correctly? Kudos for you. You understand that. What else do you understand looking at this? Well, I understand that I'm thinking about what 4 multiplies by to go into, the 400. I'm specifically as a teacher looking for what do they understand and where is the hole in their thinking. I'm then teaching students how to look at their test in the same light. I'm getting them to think, what do I understand? I'm not just I put the digit in the wrong place. So what does that mean? What part of that do you get? And what part of it do you need to grow into? That gives that open mindset of, oh, I'm not dumb at math. I'm not, just because I'm red, I got those problems wrong. Like I actually understand all of long division. I just keep mismultiplying. When I wrote my 6s of my multiples, I skipped 24. Yeah, that's probably going to impact your answer. Okay. So I'm like, you actually understand all of this. So what are we going to do to correct this in the future? Right? That is that metacognition that they're now aware of as they're test taking or as they do a revision. So our next piece of this would be, now I want you to do revisions here. So they would fill this out. Okay. They would color code it. And then if you're in the primary grades in kindergarten, first grade, Heidi was saying in kindergarten, she had kids still fill this out, even in kindergarten. And they were able to go back and see like it said to underline and they circled or little things like that, that I'm like, I can tell you knew which one was a triangle. So what did you not understand? Like, I didn't understand the directions. Yeah. Okay. So she was still using it, whatever it might be. If I'm looking here though, I could give on the primary ones, it has like an emoji filter. So it's like, give me a smiley face if you feel like I mostly have got this, a straight face if you feel like I'm getting there. I'm still making some mistakes, but I'm getting there. And then a frowning face, or maybe not even, I don't even like the frowning face. I think it's a question mark or something. I think it's a question mark in a little speech bubble is the emoji we use. And it says not there yet, meaning I'm really not understanding this. Okay. So they give their own rating and then they can also then choose for a test correction. Which of them do they want to go focus on? So just like with you can't reteach the entire test. You can't reteach every single item on here. I wish we had that time. That was a perfect world. Wouldn't that be lovely? I don't think we have that time. Now, it's not to say I can't keep going at it and reteaching these things even over the course of the year. But if I'm only spending 1 day to reteach or 2 days to reteach, I need to make sure it's something that is a big bucket item. So I'm not reteaching everything here. I'm looking for the things that had some of the most assessment items, one of the major clusters of work, something that's going to impact future work. And I'm having students focus in on those two. Let's do some thinking about what we understand and what we're not understanding. And then we're going to do some test corrections. So now that we've had that reflection, I'm going to say, now go through, let's say, the next 3 problems. And I want you to be able to tell me the same thing. What parts did you understand and where do you see the error? Because now I can say, okay, circle the mistake. Now that's really, I think, more for our upper grades, but I'm sure we can have similar conversations with our primary kids. So it was a careless mistake. I just wrote the numbers wrong. I'm like, oh my gosh, it has nothing to do with how good of a math kid you are. Like you just wrote like, what a careless mistake. No problem. Mathematicians do that all the time. But now you probably need to take a little more care. It's a computational mistake. You totally understand how this works. You just misadded. You mismultiplied. Okay, so think about what that does to a mindset. I'm not terrible at math. I just need to slow down. Okay, conceptual mistake. Maybe they used a wrong operation. They thought it was an addition problem. It's really a subtraction problem. Or conceptual mistake would be, I thought I was finding the area and I actually found the perimeter. Okay, you still know something. You know what area is. You just mixed up your terms. Simple. We can fix that. How are we going to remember that in the future, right? I think the bottom line is that we want to make sure that we're communicating really effectively with parents, that they understand what these scores mean and how we're breaking apart the assessment. We are trying to move people away from a percentage-based idea. Even if you're not standards-based grading, Even if you're still doing the ABCD, you're still doing percentages. You can still report out in this way to give meaning behind that percentage. I think also we need to do grading like this because it helps us. We become way clearer on what it means to be proficient beyond a right answer. And so we're looking at test questions differently. Like, what is this test question really telling me that the student knows and understands? And then finally, how are we transferring that to the student where the student starts to own their own learning? And so we start to rearrange their thoughts about math of it doesn't just mean you have the right answer. Mathematicians are able to explain their thinking. That's the part we missed. Mathematicians are able to label, like all the things that we're looking for right now. A lot of our kids think mathematicians just get it right. So if I do well on the test, it means I just have the right answer. It doesn't mean I showed my work. It doesn't mean that I understand place value. It doesn't mean okay, fill in the blank. So we're trying to reframe that so that students become more independent and more owners of their education and not just like, this is just something I had to do. It doesn't mean anything. I chucked it in my backpack. Who cares? All right, friends, I'd love to know what you're thinking. So tell me in the comments, like some questions that you might have, an aha you're having right now, something that was helpful. Let me know what you are thinking right now. Yeah, parents always want to know what their child is good at. And honestly, as a parent, I need to hear the good news first. Right? I need to know that it's not lost, especially if I have a parent that walks in and say, well, I was bad at math too. I hope they're not saying that, but I know they do. And I need to say, look at look at the loveliness here. I'm so proud of them for being able to do this, this, and this. Here is what I'd like them to work on. What else are you thinking? So if you are in the Math Genius Squad, then you know that we have all of these resources for you. So we find the assessments two places. If you're doing in Math Expressions, you're going to find them in the review test in the student book. The student review test is aligned to the Form A and Form B tests that are in your assessment guide. So that was a separate Blackline Master book that came in your Math Expressions kit. They're also on Think Central if you happen to have a Think Central access. All the tests align by item numbers. Like if number one is about rounding on the review student test, number one is about rounding on every single subsequent test. Okay. Now it might be different problems, different values, different way they ask the question, but the objective should align across all of them. But if you're a squad member under assessment supports and any of the unit, we've also given you a revised test. So I can't put the test on my website because of copyright. So if I show you here really quickly, if you're in the squad, let's just be sure that everyone knows where they're going to go. So once you're logged in, you're going to go to your grade level. Let's just say it's second. And let's say you're in unit 2. Okay, so whatever unit you're in, it looks the same. And you're going to go right here to assessment supports. This is where you're going to find a revised 2018 test where some of the questions have been taken off. Some of the language has changed. That was done by Robin Decker and her team of teachers. We're very grateful to her for letting us post them here. There's an answer guide. So you can see those assessments are here. So if you're like a 2013 user, a California 2015 user, you might want to take a look to see how the 2018 looks. And then all of your grading cover sheets are here by copyright. So again, if you're a Math Genius Squad member, everything's here, which includes that student reflection sheet. And if you don't have these, if you're not in the Math Genius Squad, then just comment link and we'll send you the link to where you can go get those. Let's see. What do you do when most students are not understanding the concepts after the unit test? It's a really great question, Amy. So first of all, I shouldn't be surprised at the unit test. I should be stopping and doing a very similar process to what we just talked about after every quick quiz. So remember, Math Expressions is broken into big idea. So I have a big idea 1, I have a quick quiz. Big idea 2, I have a quick quiz. The idea is I give big idea 1, teach big idea 1, I give the quick quiz, I stop and I reteach for a day based on that quick quiz. So I'm trying to do some intervention and double dosing before I ever get to that unit test because I'm thinking whatever they're not understanding through the unit, I want to be reteaching and double dosing. So by the time I get to the unit test, I'm not surprised by anything that's there. If most students are not understanding the concepts, I think that I'd have to have a conversation with you in terms of what exactly they're not understanding. If it's a big major cluster of work and if it was because they're missing like an entire grade level, if it's like, I don't know, I'm just trying to give some examples here. 4th grade and like it's like the rounding thing. If rounding is a thing they don't understand, I can do rounding in my quick practice and keep that learning going. And even in other units, like we're just going to it's more about consistency rather than intensity. They just need a lot of exposure. If it's something like they don't understand at all how to do division, I probably need to slow down for a day or more. I need it like more than that possibly, but I need to now put it in an intervention cycle. So more than 80, if 80% of your kids get it, we're going to move. If less than 80% get it, I probably need to take a chill and see if I can get them there with an extra day or so of reteaching. It's a really precise question. Oh, good. Perfect. Nicole, so you should have everything you need in the squad. So in the assessment support section, click any unit. We are revising these sections. So we're caught up through unit 3 right now. If you're looking for anything past unit 3, then reach out personally. You can email us or put in the community and we'll get you what you need. They get the quick quizzes, but not the unit test. Oh, that's kind of true. It is more complicated. So I would say, so Amy's saying they're doing fine on the quick quiz. They're just not doing on the unit test because the unit test is a whole nother level of rigor. Then I think we have to jump the rigor in those lessons. So remember when we take that test ourselves and we were saying, okay, like number 4 is like way harder than they had to do on the quick quiz. It's way harder than the lessons. Remember, they really jumped the rigor of those unit tests in 2018. If you're using the 2018 ones, I would go put that test question, like cut apart the unit test, take that test question, go put it in the lesson to remind myself I have to present more problems and that rigor, because when they're getting to the unit test, they don't recognize it and they can't do it to that extent. So I'm going to have to modify my teaching strategy. So that would definitely be something that I would be looking at. And we do that work too, right? We take that unit test in our backwards planning, and that's why we're doing it, because I know, okay, this is how it's looking in the lesson, but here's how it looks on the unit test. I got to jump up a few notches. I hope that helps. Great questions, friends. Okay, so if you're a squad member, remember it's on our website in your math membership, click your unit, and in any unit, click the word assessment reports. You're going to find modified assessments, and you're also going to find all these grading covers and class trackers. If you're not in the squad, just comment link. You're going to get a link to all those assessment reports. And all right, my friends, that is all for tonight. I hope you have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.